Princess Vara stood frozen on the bridge of her flagship, watching the tactical display with trembling hands. The green markers representing her royal fleet blinked out one by one, replaced by the cold red of confirmed casualties. 23 warships, gone, against what the initial scans had identified as a mere scout detachment. Her primary advisor, Commander Thelos, approached with his head lowered in submission. The battle had lasted 17 minutes. 17 minutes against 3 human vessels, each no larger than a civilian transport in her armada. The humans had appeared without warning in the Kepler sector, a strategic mining zone the Valorian Empire had held for 6 generations. Vara had been touring the outer colonies, demonstrating her father's military might to wavering systems. When the sensor operators detected the human ships, she saw an opportunity, a chance to prove herself worthy of the throne by crushing an enemy scout force. Her fleet held numerical superiority. Her weapons were proven. Victory seemed inevitable. The first human vessel had moved with impossible precision, its acceleration curves defying every known principle of inertial dampening. Her targeting systems couldn't lock on. The computers kept generating error codes, insisting the movements they tracked were physically impossible. Then the humans opened fire. What followed wasn't a battle. It was an execution. The human weapons tore through shield matrices designed to withstand nuclear bombardment. Armor plating that had never been breached in 3 centuries of warfare simply evaporated. Her ships exploded in brilliant flashes, their reactors going critical before emergency protocols could engage. The communications channels filled with screams and desperate pleas for retreat authorization. Vara had given the order to withdraw after losing her first 7 ships. It didn't matter. The human vessels pursued with relentless efficiency, cutting down her warships as they attempted to flee. Their weapons reached across distances that should have been impossible, striking with accuracy that suggested artificial intelligence far beyond anything in Valorian technology. Now, safely distant from the massacre, Vara watched the feed from her few remaining ships. The 3 human vessels hung in space above the burning wreckage of her fleet, utterly undamaged. They weren't even pursuing the survivors. They simply waited, as if daring anyone to return. Phalos cleared his throat softly. "The communication from Earth Command has been translated, Your Highness." Vara's stomach clenched. She nodded for him to proceed. "The human commander sends his regards and asks that you deliver a message to your father. They say this was just a routine patrol. They say if we want war, they'll send their actual military." The princess felt the blood drain from her face. A scout unit. They had lost nearly an entire battle group to what humans considered a scouting force. Her mind reeled at the implications. If this was their reconnaissance capability, what terrors did their true warships possess? She thought of her father, Emperor Draxus, who had dismissed human expansion as the fumbling of primitive apes playing with stolen technology. The intelligence reports that suggested humanity's rapid spread through contested space was due to luck and desperation rather than capability. Every assumption, every strategic assessment, every bit of conventional wisdom about the humans had just been proven catastrophically wrong. Vara straightened her shoulders, forcing herself to maintain the composure expected of royalty. "Send word to the capital immediately. Full encryption. The Emperor must know what we face." As Thelos moved to execute her orders, Vera stared at the tactical display. The human vessels had already vanished, their faster-than-light drives engaging without the standard charge-up period Valorian ships required. Even their retreat was superior. She had traveled to the frontier to demonstrate strength. Instead, she would return home carrying the most terrifying news the Empire had received in centuries. Humanity wasn't the minor threat they had assumed. They were something far worse, and this was only their scout unit. The message to her father would start a chain of events that could reshape the entire galactic order. But as Princess Vara watched the last of her ships limp toward friendly space, she knew one thing with absolute certainty. The Valorian Empire had just made a mistake that might cost them everything. They had underestimated humans. And the humans, it seemed, were very good at making examples of those who did. The journey home would take weeks. Every hour would be torture, knowing what she had to report, knowing that her failure might be the first chapter in the Empire's fall. But there was no avoiding it now. The die was cast. Humanity had announced itself to the galaxy, and they had done so in the most definitive way possible, by destroying a royal fleet with nothing but scouts. The Imperial Palace on Valeria Prime gleamed under 3 suns, its crystalline spires reaching toward the heavens like fingers of frozen light. Princess Vara had rehearsed her report 1,000 times during the journey home, but now, standing before the assembled War Council in the Great Chamber, the words caught in her throat like shards of glass. Emperor Draxus sat upon the eternal throne, his face carved from stone, his eyes burning with barely contained fury. Around the circular chamber, dozens of military commanders, planetary governors, and noble advisors watched in silence. The shame of her defeat hung in the air like a poisonous fog. "Explain to me, daughter, how 3 enemy vessels destroyed 23 of our finest warships." The Emperor's voice was soft, which made it more terrifying than any shout. In detail, Vera forced herself to meet his gaze. Their acceleration capabilities exceed our models by a factor of 12. Their weapon systems penetrate our shields as if they don't exist. Their targeting accuracy suggests predictive algorithms we don't understand. And most critically, their ships operated with perfect coordination as if controlled by a single mind. A murmur rippled through the council. Admiral Corvin, commander of the home fleet, leaned forward. "Impossible. No biological pilot can withstand the G-forces implied by those acceleration numbers. Their crews would be liquefied." That was my first assumption as well. Vera activated the holographic display at the chamber's center. The recovered sensor data painted a picture in light and mathematics, but our scans detected life signs aboard all 3 vessels. Not artificial intelligence, living crew members. The implications settled over the council like a shroud. General Praxis, the Empire's most decorated ground commander, spoke up. "Then their inertial dampening technology is decades ahead of ours. Perhaps centuries. It's worse than that." Bara manipulated the display, showing the weapons analysis. "Their energy weapons operate on principles our physicists can't explain. The beam coherence shouldn't be possible over those distances. The power requirements alone should require reactors the size of moons. Yet these were small ships, smaller than our frigates." Lord Chancellor Myros, her father's chief political advisor, rose from his seat. "Your Highness, with respect, could this have been some kind of trap? Perhaps these were not scouts, but specially designed hunter-killer vessels meant to appear as scouts? We considered that possibility." Vara pulled up the communication transcripts, but the human commander's message was clear. They identified themselves as Patrol Group 7 from Earth's Colonial Defense Network, a routine border patrol. They even apologized for the misunderstanding and offered to retrieve our survivors. The chamber erupted in outraged voices. Apologized? They massacre our fleet and apologize? This is an insult beyond measure. Emperor Draxus raised his hand and silence fell instantly. "What do we know about their military structure?" "Very little, Father." Vara's voice steadied as she moved into intelligence briefing mode. Human space encompasses approximately 47 colonized systems, all established within the last 75 standard years. Their expansion rate is unprecedented. They claim a total population of 18 billion across all worlds. 18 billion. Admiral Corvin scoffed. "We number over 200 billion. They're insects. Insects with better weapons, better ships, and better training." Vada's retort came sharper than intended. She softened her tone. The scout commander's message included a data packet, technical specifications on their patrol vessels offered freely. Our analysts have been studying it for weeks. And the Emperor leaned forward. "If the data is accurate, and we have no reason to believe it isn't, then a single human destroyer-class vessel could potentially engage our entire home fleet with favorable odds." The silence that followed was absolute. It was Admiral Corvin who finally broke it, his voice hollow. "That's not possible. I didn't believe it either." Vera closed her eyes, remembering the helplessness of watching her ships die. But I watched it happen. I watched 3 small ships destroy a force that should have overwhelmed them through sheer numbers. Their pilots never hesitated, never made errors, never showed fear. They fought like machines, but thought like generals. General Praxis stood, his face grave. "Your Majesty, if this assessment is accurate, we face an existential threat. Humanity could conquer the Empire within a year if they chose to commit their full military strength." The Emperor's fingers drummed against the armrest of his throne. What do they want? According to their diplomatic channels, nothing. Vera pulled up the final piece of data. They've sent an official communication to the throne. They express regret for the loss of life and request a dialogue to establish formal borders and trade agreements. They emphasize their desire for peaceful coexistence. Lord Myros narrowed his eyes. They humiliate us, then offer friendship? This is psychological warfare. They want us afraid. Mission accomplished. Admiral Corvin's bitter laugh echoed through the chamber. I've reviewed the princess's sensor data personally. Everything she says is accurate. We're outmatched. Emperor Draxus rose from his throne and every person in the chamber immediately bowed. When he spoke, his voice carried the weight of dynasties. We will not be intimidated. We will not show weakness, but neither will we be fools. He turned to Vara. Daughter, you will lead a diplomatic mission to Earth. You will learn everything you can about these humans, their culture, their technology, their intentions. Vara's head snapped up in surprise. Father, I failed you. I lost ships under my command. Surely someone else should bear this responsibility. You survived. The Emperor's expression softened slightly. You recognized superior force and withdrew before losing your entire fleet. You faced the humans and lived to report it. That makes you more qualified than any admiral who has only fought simulations. He addressed the full council. Until we understand what we face, we will avoid all contact with human forces. All ships are to maintain a distance of no less than 5 light-years from human-claimed space. We will respond to their diplomatic overtures with cautious interest while we assess the true extent of their capabilities. General Praxis cleared his throat. And if they refuse diplomacy? If they demand submission? Then we will fight and die with honor. The Emperor's voice hardened. But I did not build this empire by charging blindly into battles I cannot win. We will learn. We will adapt. And when the time comes, if war is inevitable, we will be ready. Vara bowed deeply. I will not fail you again, Father. You haven't failed me yet, daughter. The Emperor returned to his throne. You've given me the truth, however bitter. Now go and learn more truth. Find out who these humans really are. Find out what they want. And most importantly, find out if they can be beaten. As the council dispersed, Vara remained in the chamber, staring at the holographic display still showing the 3 human vessels. Somewhere across the vast darkness of space, those scouts were continuing their patrol, utterly unaware of the panic they had caused. Or perhaps they knew exactly what they had done. The princess had fought many battles and simulations, studied countless historical conflicts, trained with the finest weapons masters in the Empire. None of it had prepared her for the reality of facing an enemy so far beyond her understanding. But she was her father's daughter. She would go to Earth. She would face the humans in their own territory. And she would find out if the Empire had any chance of survival. The diplomatic transport broke through Earth's atmosphere 3 months after the battle in the Kepler sector, and Princess Vara pressed her face against the viewport like a child seeing the ocean for the first time. The planet below shouldn't have been possible. The blue was too vivid, the clouds too white, the continents too green. It was as if someone had taken the ideal world from ancient Valorian myths and made it real. This is their home world? Commander Thello stood beside her, equally transfixed. I expected something more industrial, more militarized. So did I. Vara watched cities scroll past beneath them, their lights twinkling in the dusk. The intelligence briefing said Earth holds only 8 billion of their total population. The rest are scattered across colony worlds, 8 billion on a garden world. Thelos shook his head. We have planets with 50 billion packed onto every available surface. They could quadruple their population here and still have room to spare. The shuttle landed at a facility outside a city the humans called Geneva, an ancient settlement that predated their space age by millennia. That fact alone unsettled Vara. Valorians had spread to the stars only 400 years after achieving industrial civilization. Humans had spent thousands of years confined to this one world, developing, growing, apparently in no rush to leave their paradise. The reception committee waited on the landing pad. Vara had expected military officers in dress uniforms, perhaps some government officials. Instead, she found herself facing a woman in simple civilian clothes, flanked by 2 guards who carried no visible weapons. "Princess Vara, welcome to Earth." The woman extended her hand in the human gesture of greeting. "I'm Director Lisa Monroe, representing the United Earth Government's Diplomatic Corps. We're honored by your visit." Vara clasped the offered hand, feeling the strange customs warmth. "Director Monroe, I come bearing messages from Emperor Draxus and seeking understanding between our peoples." "Of course. Please, follow me. We've prepared accommodations that should suit your physiology. Our xenobiologists have been working around the clock." They walked through corridors that felt wrong to Vara's senses. Too open, too decorated, too unconcerned with defensive positions or security protocols. Art hung on walls. Plants grew in decorative containers. Windows looked out on gardens rather than armored bulkheads. This was a building designed by people who felt safe. The conference room continued the theme. A massive wooden table, chairs designed for comfort rather than efficiency, and windows offering a panoramic view of mountains in the distance. Director Monroe gestured for them to sit. "I imagine you have many questions." The director settled into her chair with easy grace. "We've been expecting someone from the Empire since the incident in the Kepler sector. I want to start by offering our sincere apologies for the loss of life." Vara kept her expression neutral. "Your patrol unit destroyed 23 warships, yet you call it an incident?" Director Monroe's face showed genuine regret. "From our perspective, it was a tragic misunderstanding. Captain Ryan Miller, who commanded that patrol, followed his standing orders. When fired upon, he defended his ships. He attempted to disable your vessels rather than destroy them, but the power differential made that impossible." The casual way she said it sent ice through Vara's veins. "He tried to disable them?" "Yes." Monroe pulled up a holographic display that made Valorian technology look like stone tools. "If Captain Miller had wanted to maximize casualties, he could have destroyed your entire fleet in under 3 minutes. Instead, he prioritized allowing escape routes and transmitted evacuation warnings in 17 different languages, including Valorian." Vara's mouth went dry. 3 minutes for the entire fleet? "I'm sorry, Your Highness. I don't mean to be cruel." Monroe's expression was genuinely apologetic. "But you need to understand what happened. Your fleet engaged what you thought was an easy target. Captain Miller engaged what he considered a potential threat to civilian colonies. He acted with remarkable restraint given the circumstances." "Restraint?" Fellows spoke for the first time, his voice tight with anger. "He slaughtered our people. He protected his patrol route and the 3 million colonists in the adjacent systems." Monroe met his gaze calmly. "Captain Miller is 26 years old. He graduated from the Colonial Defense Academy 2 years ago. He commands a routine patrol because he's still considered inexperienced by our standards." The words hung in the air like a death sentence. Their scout commander was barely more than a cadet by their own standards. Vara forced herself to speak. "Director Monroe, I need to understand. What is humanity?" The director leaned back, considering the question. "We're survivors, Your Highness. Earth is what we call a death world. Our gravity is higher than most inhabited planets. Our diseases are more virulent. Our predators are more dangerous. We evolved in an environment that killed 99% of the species that ever lived here. Everything about us is designed for survival against impossible odds." Vara thought of Valoria Prime with its gentle climate and docile wildlife. "I'm beginning to understand," Monroe continued, her voice taking on a lecturer's cadence. "When we reached space, we encountered dozens of species who had evolved on easier worlds. Planets with lower gravity, calmer weather, fewer natural disasters. They built civilizations faster than us because they didn't have to spend all their energy just surviving. But when we finally left Earth, we brought something they didn't have. What? Vara asked, though she suspected the answer. Desperation. Monroe's smile was sad. We're not the biggest species or the strongest or the smartest, but we're the most relentless. We don't quit. We adapt. We overcome. It's literally encoded in our DNA because anything less meant extinction on our homeworld. Director Monroe activated another display showing human expansion across the stars. In 75 years, we've colonized 47 systems, worlds that other species deemed uninhabitable because of high gravity or unstable tectonics or hostile atmospheres. We terraform them, or we adapt ourselves, or we build habitats in orbit. We make it work because giving up isn't in our nature. Vara studied the map, her strategic mind processing the implications. You've deliberately chosen the worlds no one else wanted. Exactly. We're not conquerors, Princess. We're survivors looking for places to live. The galaxy is vast enough that we don't need to fight for territory. But if someone threatens our colonies, threatens our families, we respond with everything we have. And your military? Bera's voice was quiet. What I saw in Kepler is minimal. Monroe's expression remained calm. We maintain the colonial defense network to protect shipping routes and colonies. It represents perhaps 5% of our total military capability. Our real strength is held in reserve, closer to core systems in case of genuine threats. 5%. Delos made a strangled sound. That patrol group was 5%? Monroe nodded. The human race spent thousands of years fighting each other, perfecting warfare, learning every possible way to kill and survive. When we reached the stars, we turned that expertise outward, not by choice, but by necessity. Space is dangerous, full of pirates and territorial disputes and hostile environments. We built our fleets to survive anything. Vara felt the weight of it crushing down on her. My father sent me here to determine if humanity can be beaten in war. The director's expression became grave. I'll give you the answer Captain Miller would give. Your Highness, please don't try. We don't want war with the Valorian Empire. We have no territorial disputes with you. Our expansion vectors don't even intersect your space. We can coexist peacefully for centuries without ever conflicting. But if war comes, Vara had to know. Director Monroe met her eyes, and Vara saw something there that terrified her more than any weapon, an absolute certainty, cold and unyielding as the void between stars. Then we'll win, not because we're cruel, not because we want to, but because we're very, very good at war. It's what we do when survival is at stake. And Your Highness, if the Empire threatens our colonies, threatens our children, then survival will be at stake. We'll fight like cornered animals because that's what we are, animals from a death world who learn to thrive in hell. The room fell silent. Var realized she had her answer. Not the one she wanted, but the one she needed. Humanity wasn't bluffing. They weren't posturing. They were simply telling the truth, as direct and unadorned as a blade. What do you want from us? Vara finally asked. Trade, cultural exchange, peaceful borders. Monroe's warmth returned. We have no desire for empire. We just want to live, grow, and raise our children in peace. Give us that, and you'll find no better neighbor in the galaxy. Threaten that, and you'll find no worse enemy. Princess Vara understood. She had come to Earth seeking weakness, hoping to find some vulnerability the Empire could exploit. Instead, she had found a species that terrified her not through cruelty or aggression, but through sheer, unshakable competence. Humans didn't want to conquer, but they could if forced to, and that made them more dangerous than any conventional threat the Empire had ever faced. The weeks on Earth passed like a fever dream. Princess Vara had expected military demonstrations, shows of force designed to intimidate. Instead, Director Monroe had arranged cultural exchanges, academic lectures, and tours of human civilization that revealed far more than any weapons display ever could. Now Vara stood in a museum in what humans called New York, staring at artifacts that made her blood run cold. Ancient weapons, crude by modern standards but displayed with reverence and detailed placards explaining their historical significance. Swords, firearms, explosive devices, each representing some evolution in humanity's long relationship with violence. They're proud of their wars. Thello stood beside her, studying a display about something called the Second World War. Look at how they present it, not with shame, but as a defining moment in their history. Director Monroe approached from behind. It was our darkest hour and our finest. The war cost 60 million lives, reshaped our entire civilization, and taught us lessons we've never forgotten. Farah turned to face her. What lessons? That war is terrible. That peace is worth almost any price. But also that sometimes, no matter how terrible war is, it's necessary. Monroe gestured at the displays. We don't celebrate violence, Princess. We remember it. We study it. We ensure every generation understands the cost. A young human woman approached their group, wearing the badge of a museum guide. She couldn't have been more than 20 standard years old. Excuse me, but are you the Valorian delegation? I'm Katie Brooks, graduate student in xenoanthropology. Could I ask you some questions? Vara found herself charmed by the directness. Of course. Thank you. Katie pulled out a recording device. What surprises you most about humanity? The question was so simple yet so profound. Vara considered her answer carefully. Your contradictions. You're peaceful but deadly. You're welcoming but dangerous. You value individual life yet train everyone for potential combat. I don't understand how these things coexist. Katie smiled. That's the human condition in a nutshell. We're walking contradictions because our history demanded it. Let me ask you something. How does Valorian society handle military training? Only the warrior caste receives combat training. Bada explained. Perhaps 5% of our population. The rest are scholars, merchants, artisans. We have clear roles. Everyone here trains. Katie's voice was matter-of-fact. Physical education from age 5. Basic survival skills in primary school. Emergency response protocols in secondary education. By the time we're adults, every human knows how to fight, how to survive, how to protect themselves and others. It's not because we're violent. It's because Earth taught us that peaceful people who can't defend themselves don't stay peaceful for long. They become victims. The casual way she said it, as if it were the most natural thing in the world, sent chills down Vera's spine. You're all soldiers? We're all survivors. Katie corrected gently. There's a difference. Most of us will never fire a weapon in anger. We'll live peaceful lives, raise families, contribute to society in 1,000 non-violent ways. But if the moment comes, if we're needed, we're ready. Director Monroe led them to another section of the museum, one dedicated to human expansion into space. The displays showed early colonies, disasters, triumphs, and the slow, painful process of learning to thrive beyond Earth. This is the memorial to the Mars colony disaster. Monroe stopped before a wall covered in names. Thousands of them. In our early days of colonization, we made mistakes. Mars's first settlement failed catastrophically. 15,000 people died when the primary habitat failed. They starved, froze, and suffocated over 6 months while rescue ships rushed to reach them. Vara stared at the names. I hadn't heard about this. We don't hide our failures. Monroe's voice was quiet. We study them, remember them, and ensure they never happen again. Every colonial defense officer studies the Mars disaster in their first year. It's why our safety protocols are so extreme. It's why we're so protective of our colonies. We've lost people before. Too many people. We won't lose more if we can prevent it. That night, Vara attended a dinner with human military officers expecting formality and propaganda. Instead, she found herself in a relaxed restaurant sharing a meal with men and women who talked about their families, their hobbies, their hopes for the future. Captain Ryan Miller, the officer who had destroyed her fleet, was among them. He was younger than she expected, with kind eyes and an easy smile that made it hard to believe he was responsible for hundreds of deaths. Your Highness, I want to apologize personally for the Kepler incident. If I had known your intentions were exploratory rather than hostile, I would have responded differently. Vara struggled with the cognitive dissonance. "You destroyed my fleet in minutes." "I did." Miller's expression became serious. "And it haunts me. Every life lost in that engagement weighs on me. I followed my orders and protected my patrol sector, but that doesn't make the cost any less real. I hope you can understand that I took no joy in it." His sincerity was undeniable. Vara found herself believing him. "Captain, how did you become so skilled?" The tactical precision I witnessed was unlike anything in our military doctrine. Miller shrugged. "Standard training, really. We run simulations from age 12 in secondary school, basic tactics courses in university. Then 4 years at the Defense Academy, followed by 2 years of field training. By the time we command a patrol group, we've run through thousands of combat scenarios." "Thousands?" Dulles interjected. "Our best admirals have experience with hundreds." Another officer, Commander David Parker, laughed. "I'm sorry, but hundreds?" "We run that many in a single semester. The Academy's AI systems generate endless scenarios, each one designed to test different aspects of command strategy and decision-making. By graduation, we fought every type of battle imaginable, because you expect to need that experience." Vara was beginning to understand. You prepare for war even though you hope for peace. Hope for the best, prepare for the worst. Miller raised his glass in a toast. "It's the first lesson they teach us. Peace is fragile. It must be protected by those willing to fight for it." The conversation continued late into the night, and Vara found herself genuinely liking these humans. They were warm, funny, curious about Valorian culture, and eager to find common ground. Yet beneath the friendliness, she sensed that core of steel Director Monroe had spoken about. These were people who could shift from laughter to lethal efficiency in heartbeats. Later, back in her quarters, Vara recorded her daily report to her father. The message would take weeks to reach Valoria Prime, but she spoke as if he were in the room. "Father, I understand now why the humans are so dangerous. It's not their technology, though that's formidable. It's not their tactics, though those are superior. It's their mindset. Every human is trained from childhood to be both a civilian and a potential defender. They don't have a warrior class because they're all warriors when needed. They've turned their entire society into a machine that can switch from peaceful coexistence to total war without missing a beat." She paused, gathering her thoughts. "They genuinely want peace. I believe that completely. But they're prepared for war in ways we can't match. Our warriors train for glory and honor. Theirs train for survival and victory. Our soldiers fight when commanded. Theirs fight when necessary. The difference is everything." The recording light blinked as she continued. "I recommend we accept their offer of peaceful borders and trade agreements. A war with humanity would be catastrophic, not because they're cruel or aggressive, but because they're efficient. They would dismantle our empire, not out of malice, but out of necessity, the way a surgeon removes a tumor. Clinical, precise, and absolutely thorough." Vara thought about Katie Brooks, the young student who could probably field strip a rifle blindfolded while discussing philosophy, about Captain Miller, who carried the weight of his victories like stones, about Director Monroe, whose kindness masked a will of diamond. These are people forged by a death world and tempered by the void of space. We evolved on a gentle planet and expanded through force of numbers. They evolved in hell and expanded through force of will. We're not in the same category of species. We can coexist, even thrive as neighbors. But we cannot defeat them. She ended the recording and stared out the window at Earth's moon, hanging heavy and bright in the night sky. Somewhere below, billions of humans slept peacefully, secure in the knowledge that their protectors were vigilant. The Colonial Defense Network watched the borders. The deeper fleets waited in reserve. And every human, from children to elders, knew their role if catastrophe came. The Valorian Empire had 300 years of dominance. Humanity had thousands of years of survival. It was no contest. Princess Vara closed her eyes and prayed her father would see wisdom. War with Earth would mean extinction. Peace meant merely accepting that they had found someone better at the game of survival. The choice should have been simple, but pride, she knew, could make simple choices impossible. and the Valorian Empire had a great deal of pride. The transmission from Valoria Prime arrived 6 weeks into Princess Vara's diplomatic mission, and she knew from the encryption level that it contained either war orders or a miracle. She retreated to the secure chamber humans had provided, noting how they had respected her privacy without monitoring equipment or guards. Another small detail that spoke volumes about their confidence. Emperor Draxus appeared in holographic form, and Vara's heart sank. Her father looked older, his face lined with stress she'd never seen before. The political situation here has deteriorated. The war faction grows stronger daily. They say I've grown soft, that I fear humans because my daughter was defeated by scouts. Admiral Corvin leads the charge, calling for immediate retaliation to restore our honor. Vara felt ice form in her chest. Father, that would be suicide. I know. Her father's voice carried infinite weariness. I've read your reports. I believe your assessment. But I'm not sure I can hold the council much longer. They want blood for blood, glory for shame. They think you've been deceived by human propaganda. The hologram flickered as her father leaned forward. I need something, Vara. Some concrete proof that war with humanity would be as catastrophic as you claim. Intelligence I can show the war faction that will make them reconsider. Without that, I fear Admiral Corvin will force a vote I cannot win. After the transmission ended, Vara sat in silence. She needed proof, but what would convince admirals who had never faced human military capability? They had her reports, the sensor data, the tactical analysis, but warriors who had never lost believed themselves invincible. She requested an emergency meeting with Director Monroe and found the human diplomat already aware of the situation. Your communications aren't as secure as you think, Monroe said gently. We've known about the political situation on Valoria Prime since it began. We've been waiting for you to ask for help. You've been monitoring our diplomatic channels? Vara should have been angry, but she was too desperate. That's an act of war. Only if we use the intelligence for harm. Monroe's expression was sympathetic. We're using it to prevent war. There's a difference. We know Admiral Corvin plans to push for a military strike within the next standard month. We know he's convinced himself that your defeat was a fluke, that human forces can be beaten with proper tactics and overwhelming numbers. Can you provide proof he's wrong? Director Monroe's smile was sad. Your Highness, we can provide something better. We can show you what Admiral Corvin is planning to attack, and why it would be the end of your empire. An hour later, Vara stood in an orbital observation station above Earth, looking at displays that made her earlier tactical briefings look like child's play. Director Monroe had brought military advisors, including Fleet Admiral Christine Norton, the highest-ranking officer in human space. Admiral Norton was a woman in her 60s, with gray hair and eyes that had seen things Vara couldn't imagine. Your Highness, I understand your empire is considering an assault on our border colonies, specifically the agricultural systems in the Perseus Arm. That's Admiral Corvin's plan. Vara confirmed. He believes if he can destroy your food production, he can force favorable terms. Norton pulled up a tactical map. Here's what he doesn't know. Those agricultural worlds are defended by the Second Fleet, not patrol groups, not scouts, our actual military. The display expanded, showing ship formations that dwarfed anything Vara had seen. Hundreds of vessels, each one making the patrol ships that destroyed her fleet look like toys. Carriers, battleships, siege platforms, weapons she didn't have names for. This is just the Second Fleet? Vara's voice came out as a whisper. We have 7 fleets. Norton's voice was flat, emotionless. The Second Fleet's primary mission is agricultural system defense. They're not our best or most aggressive. They're farmers protecting farmers. But they're still a fleet. She manipulated the display, showing detailed specifications. Each of these battleships carries more firepower than your entire engagement force had in the Kepler sector. They can operate independently for years without resupply. Their AI coordination systems allow perfect tactical synchronization across light minutes of separation, and they're crewed by officers with an average of 15 years' experience. Vara did the math and felt sick. Admiral Corvin's attack plan calls for a strike force of 200 ships. Your Second Fleet could destroy them completely. Norton nodded. in approximately 47 minutes according to our simulations. And that's if they fought defensively. If the Second Fleet pursued into Valorian space, the war would be over in months. Show me the full extent of your military. Vara had to know. Everything. Admiral Norton exchanged glances with Director Monroe, who nodded. Very well. But understand, Princess, this information is classified at the highest levels. We're sharing it with you because we'd rather prevent a war than win one. The display transformed, showing human space in its entirety. 7 fleets positioned strategically, each one color-coded. The Second Fleet defending agricultural systems. The Third Fleet protecting core industrial worlds. The Fourth Fleet stationed near Earth itself. And so on, each one a concentration of power that could shatter Valorian military might. But it was the First Fleet that made Vara's legs buckle. Positioned in deep space, far from any colony or trade route, it hung like a sword suspended above the galaxy. 3,000 ships, capital vessels that massed as much as small moons, weapons that could crack planets. And at its heart, something Norton called simply the Hammer. That's our contingency fleet. Norton's voice held a note of pride tinged with fear, built for one purpose only: to respond to existential threats to humanity. If anyone threatens Earth, threatens our survival as a species, the First Fleet mobilizes. It has never been deployed. Why show me this? Vara couldn't look away from the display. You could have let us attack, destroyed our fleet, and ended the threat, because we don't want to kill your people. Director Monroe stepped forward. We've studied Valorian culture, Your Highness. Your artists, philosophers, builders, you've created beauty across 100 worlds. The galaxy is richer for your existence. We'd much rather have you as neighbors and eventually friends than as corpses and cautionary tales. Norton continued. If Admiral Corvin attacks, we'll defend ourselves. The Second Fleet will engage and destroy his forces completely. Then, to prevent further aggression, we'll be forced to neutralize your military capability. Not through occupation, we don't want your territory, but through demonstration. We'll enter Valorian space and systematically disable every military installation, every shipyard, every weapons platform. We'll leave your civilian infrastructure intact, but your ability to wage war will be eliminated. And if we resist, Vara had to ask, then casualties will be severe on your side. Norton's expression was grim. We don't want that. We'd much rather give you the intelligence you need to convince your war faction that this path leads only to destruction. Vara spent the next 3 days reviewing everything Admiral Norton shared. Tactical simulations, weapons specifications, historical battle data from human conflicts. The picture that emerged was terrifying not because of human aggression, but because of human preparation. They had planned for every contingency, war-gamed every scenario, and built a military machine that could protect their civilization against any threat. On the 4th day, Director Monroe provided her with something unexpected. A complete intelligence package, encrypted for Emperor Draxus personally. It contained everything Vara had seen, plus analysis from human strategic planners about how a war between the Empire and humanity would unfold. Not propaganda, but cold mathematical projections based on known capabilities. The conclusion was stark. Valorian defeat in 6 to 8 months, with casualty estimates in the billions. The Empire would survive but would be reduced to a fraction of its former glory. Its military power shattered, its pride broken forever. Give this to your father. Monroe's voice was gentle. Let him show it to Admiral Corvin and the war faction. Let them see what they're actually proposing. And then let them make an informed decision about the Empire's future. Why are you doing this? Vara asked. You could simply crush us when we attack, because mercy is strength too. Monroe smiled. We're strong enough to win any war, which means we're strong enough to prevent wars we don't need to fight. Your empire isn't our enemy, Princess. Your empire is a potential friend who's been listening to bad advice. We'd rather help you see the truth than prove it with blood. Princess Vara returned to her quarters that night carrying the data package that could save or doom her civilization. She thought about Katie Brooks, the student warrior, about Captain Miller, the reluctant killer, about Admiral Norton, the guardian of humanity's ultimate weapon, about Director Monroe, who wielded kindness like a blade. Earth hung outside her window, blue and beautiful and absolutely lethal to those who threatened it. Vara had come here seeking humanity's weakness and found only their terrifying competence. They were everything the Empire wasn't, practical instead of proud, prepared instead of presumptuous, willing to make hard choices instead of chasing glory. She recorded one final message to her father. I have what you need, but Father, please understand. This isn't about winning or losing anymore. It's about recognizing that we've encountered something new in the galaxy. A species that doesn't want empire but will absolutely defend what they have. We can be their neighbors or their victims. There's no middle ground. The transmission screamed across space toward Valoria Prime at faster-than-light speeds, carrying humanity's gift, the truth offered freely with no demands or threats attached. Just information and choice. Whether the Empire chose wisdom or pride would determine if Princess Vara had saved her people or merely delayed their inevitable defeat. She had done everything possible. The rest was up to her father and the fate he would choose for their civilization. As she fell asleep, Vara dreamed of Earth's ancient wars, of humans fighting humans with primitive weapons across brutal centuries. They had survived that crucible and emerged stronger, unified, ready for the cosmos. The Valorian Empire had never faced such trials. Perhaps that was why, when they finally encountered a species forged in fire, all they could do was break, or bend. If they were wise, they would bend. And perhaps in time learn from their new neighbors how to be strong through something other than conquest, how to survive through adaptation rather than domination. The princess slept, and on a world far across the stars, Emperor Draxus received her message and prepared to make the most important decision of his reign: war or peace, pride or survival, glory or wisdom. Humanity waited for his answer, neither hoping nor fearing, simply ready as they always were for whatever came next. Because that was what Death Worlds taught. That was what survival demanded. And that was what made them, for better or worse, the most dangerous species the galaxy had ever seen. Not because they wanted to be, but because they had to be. And they were very, very good at it.